Office pranksters of Reddit, what's the best prank you've ever pulled on a coworker? I created a phishing version of our firewall login. Then called our admin over and asked him to log in so I get to some blocked website. The fake page wrote his password to a text file. Then redirected to the actual login, making it seem like it didn't take the first time. Then I wrote his password down and put it in an envelope and left it on his desk while he was at lunch. I got permission to do all this from the CTO, so we hid around the corner to watch his reaction. At first it was bewilderment. Then slowly moved to anger. Turns out it was the password he uses for everything in life. He wasn't too happy about it, but the boss and I got a good laugh. I had this prank pulled on me. This was in my first job. About 12 years ago. We weren't allowed to share music files via work email. But my work buddy begged me to anyway. I'd only just sent him some song he asked for, when I got a pop-up from an unknown sender basically saying, "This is IT. We observed you sent blah 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 and we're locking your account." I flipped out, thinking it was for real. And then I hear him laughing a few cubicles away. He sent me the pop-up. I totally fell for it. Bastard. My buddy had this hand lotion on his desk that he used every day soon as he got into work. I found the same brand bottle and bought it. Emptied it out. Then filled it full of mayonnaise. Made sure it was the same weight as his current lotion before making the switch. Just in case. And X200B. He came in and used it. I screwed up and started laughing way too hard and had to fess up. Who knows how long he would have kept putting mayo on his hands before realizing something was up. Not an office. But my teachers in middle school would pull a prank on students every year. They would find out who has and hasn't seen Back to the Future. Then teacher A would say, "Damn, I can't find my flux capacitor. John, can you go ask Mr. Smith if he has my flux capacitor?" Then Mr. Smith would send John to Mrs. Holly saying he lent it to her. But then Mrs. Holly would say she gave it to Dr. Ferdinand. And so on. John ends up walking back and forth around the school for about 30 minutes. All the while, every class in the entire school is laughing at John behind his back for not knowing what a flux capacitor is. Looking back at it, this was probably pretty mean and embarrassing to do to middle school students. But the teachers always seemed to know which students were able to take a joke and not get too upset by it. At a previous job we took turns with an on-call phone. I got it one week. And found the previous co-worker, D, hadn't signed out of Hangouts, which we used company-wide for IM. We worked in cubicle farm sort of environment. And D sat next to C. Those sort of back to back. They were pretty good work bros. But not especially close. I waited until both D and C were on phone calls. And messaged C, but it looked like it was coming from D. "Hey, my neck is hurting. Would you mind coming over here and rubbing on my shoulders?" Double quote. I was about 5 rows over when I hit send. But we all clearly heard C say, "Excuse me?" Double quote. Mid-90s. Cleared a friend co-worker's cube out while he was on vacation in Europe. And sealed it off with crime scene tape. When he came back, called him into our manager's office and told him a fairly elaborate, extremely believable story about how the office had been raided. And everything from his cube taken into evidence. Freaked him out so bad that we had to come clean with him almost immediately. It's small, but I have a friend at work who keeps leaving his computer unlocked. I go into the mouse settings and slow down the mouse movement as much as possible. We have 3 huge monitors and it's such a hilarious time to watch him try to mouse back over to the settings window that I've hidden in the bottom corner of one of the monitors. I worked with a guy who was kind of an asshole and not very computer literate. He acted as though he was better than everyone. Because our business process had a bottleneck where he had to review documents. So he basically acted like a self-important asshole. One day when he was in a meeting, I noticed he had left his computer unlocked and also that no one else was around when I happened to walk by his cubicle. I did not work near him. I hopped on his machine real quick. Took a screenshot of his desktop and the 400 file icons he kept on the desktop. And then made a folder on his C drive called desktop icons and moved them all in there and set his desktop background to the screenshot. It took him the rest of the day to figure out what was wrong and he had like a vendetta about finding out who did it. But since no one like him, no one would give him any clues it was me. This was a little bit ago. But my coworker, we will call him Bob, decided to make his screensaver pictures of his family. One day he walked away without locking his computer. I copied his directory of pictures to the file share and pointed his screensaver at it. Now I could easily add and remove pictures to his gallery. I then started modifying the pictures in Photoshop. Slowly, all of the pictures of people, his kids, his wife, animals, started to get Bob's face. Plugged in a spare USB keyboard into my coworker's desktop. Would randomly hold down the shift key when he was entering his password. Lock his terminal when he turned around to talk to someone. Or tap the Windows key while he was typing. I'm not good at not laughing. I managed to hold it in for 4 days. Until he finally lost it and started smashing his keyboard and unplugging all the USB cables. He got to the one for the extra keyboard. Looked around. Then yanked on the cable hard. And the spare keyboard skipped across my desk and slammed into my cube wall. I laughed so hard I cried for almost 15 minutes. We had a bit of an internal prank feud about a year ago where a colleague of mine did some unfunny pranks and I felt it prudent to get a bit of revenge just as I was about to leave on a business trip. To access our work programs we do most of our work through remote desktop and most of us have a shortcut on the desktop that leads there. He had left the office earlier than I. So with some time on my hands, I hid his normal shortcut and create a new one with the same icon. Except the new one just logged him out from his computer. Several jobs ago, and a long time ago, I used to work with a guy who insisted on having a clutter-free desktop on his PC. No shortcut icons. Nothing. One day when he'd gone to make coffee, I created a folder in the middle of his desktop called Goat Porn. Took a screenshot of the desktop. Deleted the folder and set the screenshot as his wallpaper. Was fun watching him try to delete it. In retaliation, he strategically placed a small sheet of film over my mouse optical sensor to stop it working. I replied by doing something similar. When his mouse wasn't working he assumed I'd done the same to him so he turned his mouse over to remove the film but no. There was no film. Instead I'd glued the mouse ball in place. Told you it was a long time ago. I didn't pull this. Just witnessed. One co-worker replaced phone receiver with a banana. The payoff couldn't have been funnier. Phone rings. Without looking dude grabs banana, puts it to his ear and says hello in front of a group of us. Laughed so hard. Same dude also taped and tucked a bunch of bologna under his chair. Which you can imagine reeked. Took him way too long to find it. Finally a different co-worker pranked the same guy by carefully constructing a new band-aid to look used. And tucked it into his takeout as we ordered in as a group. Guy shows up late as we're already eating and gets halfway through his pasta before finding the band-aid. I couldn't make eye contact during the build-up. Hardest thing I ever did to not give it away by laughing. I used to work as a sound engineer. So I guess this counts as my office joke. I was responsible for an ear monitoring on a tour. Which basically controls what the musician hears in their earbuds. On the last day of tour, it's not uncommon that bands and crew pull pranks on each other during the performances. Mine was to add a pitch of tar on the violin but only the violin player could hear that. I used it very lightly. 1 semitone off. Which makes it sound like you just missed your note ever so slightly. I didn't leave this on for the whole show. But just occasionally hit it. So it would feel like a natural error. The rest of the crew knew but nobody else. You could see the violin player storm off to get his violin retuned and come back with a confused look because it was in tune. While everyone on the crew was listening along on their own ears and cracking up every time the false note hit. Not me but my dad. Back when my grandfather used to own a few gas stations, my father was a manager of one after college. This was back in the days of attendance in southern USA. Whenever they would get a new guy, same thing happened to my dad at first. They would ask the new guy to carry a styrofoam cup full of gas to another guy working because they needed it. Apparently the chemicals in gasoline eat the cup up, so by the time they got there they would be covered in gasoline, so it was always a big laugh for everyone. I had a co-worker and he was the most unaware person in the world. Well, I got everyone together one Friday and we all tried to convince him it was Thursday. We custom printed a calendar that had the day as Thursday. We changed his computer to show today as Thursday. We had so many tiny details to try and get him to believe this. But we never thought he actually would. And he believed it within the first 2 minutes. My boss called us in for our weekly Thursday meeting, which we've never heard before, but he didn't even begin to question. And we went through the whole day saying how much we wished it was Friday and him agreeing since he always looked forwards to the weekend. Well, at the end of the day, the boss tells everyone to have a good night and then have a good weekend. And the look of confusion that hit his face was so great. And then he just smiled and whispers to me and my other co-worker, guys, the boss doesn't even know it's Thursday. That means we don't have to come in tomorrow. Awesome. And strut out of there looking like he just pulled off a heist. He was so pleased with himself. I left a note for a co-worker that a lady named Nikita had called. She was inquiring about opening an account with us. When he got to work he asked me about it and I told him I didn't know much about it because the lady was brief. So he called the number and someone from our city's zoo answered. He was confused but still asked to speak with Nikita. The lady on the other end said, "The polar bear?" Double quote. They had announced on the news that morning that we got a new polar bear named Nikita. Probably one of those "you had to be there" type things. We also took his office door off the hinges and turned it upside down. When you walk through the same door every day and all of a sudden the handle is a foot and a half higher, it can FCK with the guy. We had a Ricoh brand copier in the copy room that maintenance would routinely have to come work on. Staying late one day I drafted up a message that the copier had wirelessly updated to rely on voice activation now. I work in the south. So the real kicker was that I said the copier sometimes struggles with accents. You will need to clearly and loudly say Ricoh. Copy this to begin copying. I even included the Ricoh logo on the sheet. Ended up getting 2 people before the lady closest to the copier broke down, laughing, and let the cat out of the bag when they came to her for help. One of my co-workers won a company-wide rock paper scissors tournament. The next week, he walked away from his desk and left his computer unlocked. Someone, we still don't know who, tagged that channel in the all-company Slack channel. Which means each and every employee got an urgent push notification with a taunt about winning rock paper scissors and how does it feel to be a loser. It was simple and subtle but brilliant in that way. I printed some fake police evidence labels and stickers and packaged up everything on the co-worker's desk and labeled them, as evidence. Not so they would think it was real. Just so they'd have to unpackage all of their stuff. A co-worker asked me to gift wrap a tablet he'd bought for his wife. In the meantime, he still ate my mini candy cane. So I made a bunch of missing posters for the candy cane with the tablet as a reward. Changed the orientation of their screen in the settings so the icons were upside down. But the backdrop picture was right side up, and embarrassing, a sexy woman. The mouse was not at all intuitive to use with the screen orientated upside down. Yes, it was all the same coworker. Not an office, but a grass cutter for the local city. With weed being recently legalized, we all had to attend an important meeting which they basically added weed at the end of every relevant sentence in the substance abuse policy. 30 minutes better than working, I suppose. At the end, most of our contracts were extended, including Axel, who happened to be absent from the meeting. His phone died on the tractor, so he didn't get any messages until he plugged it in at a MCDS for break. When he called asking what happened in the meeting, I took the opportunity to loudly proclaim to the rest of the truck, who all got extended with me, that we were all done our contracts at the end of the day. About a week before our initial end date. After hanging up, everyone in the truck bursts out laughing. And all is well until I realize Axel is the type of person to plan something for tomorrow. I called back immediately and got the "why the FCK would you say that?" I was about to call my wife and make plans? Double quote. He was cool about it after at the end of the day. But I'm sure he hated me for a solid 3 hours between then. Some fun stuff we tortured our boss with. Paid the window washers to put a sticker of the rival college school's logo on the outside of his 10th floor window. Photoshopped a face swap. This was before it was a thing. 2006. On a photo of him shaking hands with the director. Even printed it out at Rite Aid and reframed it. Didn't notice for weeks. Sent him on a scavenger hunt for his car keys. At lunch. Grabbed an extra cubicle panel and walled off the entrance to someone's cubicle. Heard, but didn't see at a different team. Someone climbed through the dropped ceiling into someone's locked office. Opened it up. Put straw down. Put signs in it. And left live chickens in someone's office. Complete with webcam so the victim could see it on vacation. At my previous job, one of my coworkers was fortunate enough to have a cubicle set up with a door and taller partitions. Well, towards the end of one work day, she had to run to the restroom. Another coworker and I thought it would be hilarious to lock her out of her cube. However, prior to doing so, we tied a long string around the inside door handle and flung it over the partition so that we could unlock it once the prank was over. We hid the string well from view. She comes back from the restroom and turns bright red and starts to get flustered, wondering how the hell she was going to get back in her cube. All of her belongings including her purse and keys were inside. Mind you, she was about 5 feet 4 inches, so the slow realization that she was gonna have to climb over the partitions was priceless. We finally bust out laughing and pulled the string, opening the door for her. She was a pretty good sport about it and laughed along with us. Everyone at my high school job got along really fucking well. Like, we all hung out outside of work and shit. It was tight. Even new kids. And one of these new kids was having his first closing shift when our manager at the time, she was a piece of shit but she had her funny moments, decided to mess with him. I wasn't there. But I saw videos of it on Snapchat the day after. People started telling him about all the things we totally did to close up the restaurant. He didn't believe any of it. And everyone knew it. But he played along because it was fun to pretend that he had no idea what he was doing. The highlight of the night was when they mopped the ceiling. A colleague was on vacation, so we put watercress seeds in his keyboard and watered it. Whole thing looked like a miniature lawn when he got back. When the boss turned 60, we spent the whole afternoon the previous day blowing up hundreds of balloons and putting them in his room. It was so stuffed he could hardly open the door. He spent a good 40 minutes popping balloons. We had policy that you must lock your PC when leaving your desk. Naturally, some of my colleagues forgot from time to time. Someone would wait until she left the room. Then rush to the PC. Open Outlook and send an email with the subject "I'm surfing porn and it's wonderful" to the entire IT department. People got really good at locking their PCs after a while. I recently started a new job in a software company. Cool place. Smart kids building cutting edge stuff. I noticed a lot of people bringing cakes for the whole company. That's cool. Every couple of days there will be a public message on the internal chat from someone announcing they will bring cake in the next days. Yesterday it was Jim's turn. He let everyone know he will bring cake in a couple of days. How nice of Jim. I look over to his desk, as we work in the same office. But he's not there. I see Bob, however, just walking away from Jim's computer with a huge grin on his face. So I just found out that if you forget to lock your computer and walk away, and someone catches you, you get caked. There's even a page on the internal wiki that keeps track of this and with a list of debitors. My dad told me of an office prank he played back before internet was commonplace. He was talking with a co-worker at lunch, and they got onto the topic of animals. This co-worker, who was somewhat gullible, asked innocently if mules are sterile. How do you get new mules? My dad tried to convince her that you don't. There are only a fixed number of mules in the world, and they are immortal. She was quite rightly pretty skeptical of this. So when their boss came into the lunchroom, she asked him to debunk what my dad was telling her. The boss immediately cottoned on to what was happening and replied with, "Oh yeah, I've heard that before. I think it's something to do with a mule being present at the birth of Jesus. So God made them immortal." This co-worker was quite impressed and went on her way. My dad and his boss didn't think much more of it until the next Monday morning when she came into the office, absolutely furious with both of them. Turns out, that weekend she had gone out to a party with a bunch of her friends, and during a lull in the conversation had loudly proclaimed, "Hey, guess what I learned the other day?" Apparently her friends hadn't stopped mocking her since. My best work was the microwave usage log. One day, I printed up a page which had a grid with columns for employee name, time, food, and amount of time in the microwave. I put it on a clipboard. Clipboards make everything look more official. Got one of the senior people to fill out the first line, they were in on the joke, and left it in the office kitchenette next to the microwave. Lunchtime rolls around, and, completely unprompted, people start filling it out as they use the microwave. Some people were asking what it was about, but they all dutifully filled out the details of their microwaving. Eventually, someone on the management team caught on, took it away, and had a quiet word to me about the appropriateness of my practical jokes.